Welcome to the Moser on Manufacturing podcast, brought to you by Jacket Media Co. And now, your host, Harry Moser.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lou Weiss from Manufacturing Talk Radio, and I'm here with Harry Moser of Moser on Manufacturing. We are doing a joint presentation today. Harry, how you doing?
Everything's good, Lou. It's life's going as well as one could hope.
Great. So where are you today? I know you travel all over the country. So where are you today? Maine, Florida?
I'm in Maine. I'm at our summer place in Maine, and just got here about a week ago. In the meantime, I was up in Toronto presenting, and got back here, and now I get the opportunity to be with you. What more could a guy ask?
Well, that's great. I thank you for joining with us. And folks, Harry and I are going to be doing these events on a monthly basis. Harry is known countrywide for his reshoring initiative and all the other things that he does with regards to everything that's going on with regards to reshoring. Harry, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Okay, so sorry for my hesitation there, but here we go. Harry, what's good? What's happening? You know, the country is wild, crazy.
Yeah, there's certainly some issues for the country. Inflation is a problem, certainly.
Right.
There's and but on the other hand, there's a lot of disruption in the world. There's a lot of supply chain disruption, and that is dramatically getting the interest in companies, showing them that they need to bring the work back, showing that if they want to survive, if the country wants to be strong, they have to bring increasing amounts of the work back to the country. So it's a difficult time to go through, but it makes us stronger.
Harry, we manufacturing is of course a major component not only of our country but every other country. Manufacturing is a very important factor. So that being said, the U.S. manufacturing has been competitive and then non-competitive and so on. So where are we now with regards to U.S. competitiveness?
Well, I measure competitiveness by price. You're competitive if you can make an offer. Let's say if you can make an offer that gets you the order, you're competitive. That's the only, I think, rational definition. Like
Right.
if you can win the race, kind of thing. So so in general, one would say delivery, quality, and price are the three driving factors. But finally, most everybody can give a decent quality, and delivery somehow works out. And so it finally comes down to price. The companies make their decision finally based on price. And in that regard, measured that way, the U.S. is not price competitive. So I'm going to pull up a slide here if I can. Let's see if I can make this happen. Share screen.
There we go.
Okay, so this chart shows the China FOB price. So that's the ex works or factory price, China price as a percentage of US price. So that's what the horizontal axis is. And so at 100%, they're equal. And at the peak of the distribution, that's the mode, at the peak, the China price is about 70% of the US price. So just as a simplistic description, the China price is 30% lower than ours, driven largely by their lower wage rates, but also by decent productivity and hardworking people. It's somewhat by government subsidy, but basically it's the wage rate thing. So companies look at that and they say, well, that's 30% difference. I've got to get it there. Or if not there, then Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, India, somewhere that has that same kind of wage rate and can get the work out. So measured on price, the US is not competitive. And this is not competitive versus China. But if you do the same chart versus Germany, Italy, Spain, maybe we're 20% high or 15% high. But consistently, the US is high priced on a broad range of manufactured products, which is why we have last year a $1.1 trillion trade deficit in goods. We import 1.1 trillion more than we export. So we're not price competitive.
So here, the question that comes to my mind is that the U.S. everyone wants U.S. product, or at least that's been the myth. So here we are today. Why do they want our product? Either because of quality or what have you, but meanwhile we're more expensive.
When you say everyone, you mean everyone in the U.S. or everybody outside the U.S.?
Everyone else outside.
I don't think that's true. That was true like after the Second World War, when we were the only place that had factories that were still making products, and everybody else was bombed out and couldn't make anything. And the U.S. so we had a good reputation there for a while, but after that, and I'm not sure when, but I'm thinking 40, 50 years ago, U.S. quality went to hell. Remember when our cars were much lower rated than the imported German, Japanese, et cetera cars, because we got sloppy, we got fat and lazy, and especially especially the Germans and the Japanese were stuck to doing it the right way and did quality, and we fell behind, and Japan was using the methodology that we developed. They had Deming over there. They developed the Toyota production system based on his precepts. And then eventually the US brought those things back to the US and learned again from Japan what Japan had learned from us. And then we started to get better. We started to do lean and continuous improvement and quality and so I'd say now we're close. I did read somewhere that I think it's Mercedes U.S. factory has a slightly better quality rating than their German factories. So that combination maybe of the German company and the U.S. works out. But on average, we're good, but we're not great in terms of quality. I hate to say it, but I think it's true.
So what you're intimating is that we ain't as great as we used to be.
Not as great as we were, say, in the 50s and 60s. Yeah, I agree. Not as great as we used to be, and others keep getting better. Like China. Let's go back to Japan. When I started working summers when I was 14 or 15 at Singer Sewing Machine, the managers and the engineers would look at some simple little things coming in from Japan, parts of a sewing machine or maybe a simple sewing machine, and laugh at what they saw. And then 20, 30 years later, Japan was kicking our ass in all kinds of electronic products and machine tools and all kinds of stuff that they worked their way rapidly up the curve in terms of quality and cost. And the Chinese have done the same thing. They started being very rural, simplistic, low technology 30 years ago, and rapidly, because of government and discipline and very aggressive companies, worked their way up the scale. And like somebody told me once about going over there to buy mold bases, and his company was buying 200 mold bases a year. And he said, I'm going to go get a discount, And he came over to this Chinese mold base factory that was making maybe 1,000 mold bases a day, And his business, they didn't care if they had his business or not. He was just this tiny little bit, and they were automated, and they were pushing this stuff out the way you think of us doing at a world-class level back during and after World War II, when we when Henry Ford and all that kind of stuff that eventually developed. So we used to have that value, and now the Germans, the Chinese have it, I'd say, better than we do. It's time for us to bring it back.
So what's going on with Europe and competitiveness with the U.S.?
Well, my simplistic way of describing that, the U.S., if you compare us with our top 10 trading partners, Germany, China, et cetera, of the top 10 trading partners, we have trade deficits with 9 of the 10. No, goods trade deficit. We import more from 9 out of the 10 top trading partners, import more than we export. The only exception is UK. And UK was the leading industrial power, 150 years ago, maybe. And they've declined ever since. So they're like 30 years ahead of us on the decline from the manufacturing peak. And so against the other ones, against Italy, Germany, et cetera, and then South Korea, Japan, et cetera, we have big trade deficits. We're not competitive.
We were always considered to be high quality. How are we in that genre? How are we working with the quality issues either in Europe or China, Japan? I mean, Japan has come a long way. We taught them how to do that. How are things going on with Europe? And certainly right now with regards to what's going on in Europe and what's going on with the Ukraine and Russia and so on and so forth. There's many bad things going on.
Things are tough. Things are tough. The world's very disrupted. I think the difference between our country and those countries, the biggest couple of differences. First, we lost our focus on manufacturing. We were a great manufacturing country after the Second World War. We produced over half of the total manufacturing output in the world. So we were the Goliath. We were it. And then the other countries came back. The bombed out factories in Germany and Japan and so on came back. To me, the biggest couple of differences: U.S. companies have significantly neglected manufacturing. Companies have been told by the Harvard Business School professors that they should focus on their core competence. And the core competence is finance, it's marketing, it's buying and selling stock, it's various things like that. That might be engineering, but not manufacturing. They've been told by the professors, that's routine, that's easy. Send that off to China, India, somewhere else, get it done. And so company after company hollowed out, shut their factories. Some got outsourced in the U.S., much of it went offshore. So it was no longer their main concern. Okay. And then separately, the smart kids that used to maybe go into tool making, welding, precision machinists, they said, I could do better, going to work on Wall Street or doing, working for the government or doing something else. They believe that might not be true. And so we didn't get the quality of recruit that, say, Germany gets. And then we did, once they were recruited into the industry, we said, okay, kid, hang around with Bill there and see what Bill does, and you'll learn how to do it. Whereas in Germany, they go through this 4-year apprenticeship system, and when they come out, they're exceptionally talented. And so we have recruited less effectively. Think of it in football. If you don't recruit well for your next year, and then you don't train them well, you don't win. And we've been in that. That's a valid description, I think, of what we've done. Now, starting to come around, people are starting to understand that a manufacturing career, once again, is a great career. And the message that you get out certainly helps in doing that. But we're making progress. We've still got a ways to go.
As you mentioned a moment ago about Germany and training and so on, the issue about training and the German issues in regards to training and so on is that they learn how to they learn all of the ways that they need to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. But meanwhile, they also are doing and have been doing, training in
the trades, the professions.
The trades.
I know. Yeah.
And they are learning by doing that for a lot of years. We still don't do that.
That's the problem. They over in Germany and Switzerland's the same. I've taken 4 different tours of apprentices and shop owners to Switzerland to see the system. And at the age of, I think, 15, they do an internship for a couple of weeks or a month in a company. At the age of 16, 60% of the students in high school take an apprenticeship. And it could be tool making, welding, it could be bank clerk, but it's something. And by that time, these kids are already very well educated in terms of history and math and science and what's going on. And they speak 2 or 3 languages. I mean, they're way ahead of our kids. And then they have this 4-year apprenticeship that starts off with the absolute basics, grinding the block square and all that kind of thing, and wind up coming out exceptionally talented. I often tell the story of a Swiss machine tool company, and I took a gang of apprentices there, and one of the senior managers said, when we're selling a machine tool to Germany or Switzerland, and you have a really complex part, we'll program the part in one setup, complex 5-axis programming, maybe because we know the Germans and the Swiss can handle it. On the average, when we do that for the Americans, we break it down into 2 setups because their people are on average not sophisticated enough to handle the more complicated programming. So I'm sure our best are as good as their best, but our average isn't as good as it needs to be price competitive and quality competitive worldwide.
So how important is the competitiveness?
Well, it's the competitiveness that drives the competitiveness is the fact that our price is too high, and that means the companies don't buy here. And as a result of that, we have this. We're missing 5 or 6 million manufacturing jobs that we would have if we had balanced trade instead of having this huge trade deficit. So would you like to have 5 or 6 million more manufacturing jobs? Would you like to sell 40% more from your company? Would you like to have all those people in good jobs paying taxes and their companies paying taxes and cutting our budget deficit dramatically? Would you like to have the country to be self-sufficient? Yeah, I want all those things, and that's why we're doing this.
So competitiveness, of course, is essential in what we are doing and what other countries are doing. But the point is that we need to understand that we need to have good talent. We need to have solve some of the problems with regards to skill gaps, people leaving the manufacturing sector and so on and so forth. So that all adds to the quality issue, the delivery issue, and delivery, of course, is also a major component. And now, since we've been living through 3 or 3.5 years of COVID, it's hard to be competitive when you don't have people, you don't have skills, you don't have the training, you don't have. Where are we going, Harry?
Well, first, I want to show you another couple of slides, and then we'll get to that. Okay. So here's can you see the new slide?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the good news. The bad news was that 30% price difference here's that same data, the blue line, and here's again China percentage of U.S. And so here's that 70% peak. So on average, China price 70% of U.S. price. But when you look at total cost of ownership, which is price plus duty, freight, packaging, carrying cost of inventory, all that kind of stuff thrown in, now all of a sudden we average 85% of China. And if there happened to be a Trump 15% tariff, love them or hate them, you wind up with a curve shifting over here. So based on price, the US wins 8% of the time, based on total cost, 32%. And if there's a tariff, then 46% of the time. So the point here is that as bad as we look based on price, if you do the measurement correctly, if you look at total cost, if you recognize if there's a tariff, all of a sudden there's about 20 or 30% of what we now import that companies could bring back without raising their prices, without impacting their profitability, if they would just do the math correctly. But they don't do that. This is a survey that we did with Plant Moran, one of the big auditing and consulting companies.
Right.
And we asked manufacturers and distributors, to the extent that you import, why do you import instead of sourcing here? And overwhelmingly, they said price. In my other topics, not available here. Why isn't it available here? Because the U.S. industry was put out of business by the imports in that category. So we say that about 70% of the decision to import is driven by price, and therefore, if you're not price competitive, you're not in the game. Okay. So I just wanted to get those in.
Yeah, I got that. Harry, you talk about KPMG and NAM, the National Association of Manufacturing. Recently, you did a study showing that the U.S. is the 5th most competitive country, way ahead of Germany, China, Japan, and so on. How does that play out on the world stage?
Yeah, well, you might say, how is that consistent with what I've just been saying?
Yeah.
If we're the 5th most competitive country, why do I say we're not? And I'm really confident in my observations, because my observations reflect the reality of this huge trade deficit, and our trade deficits with numerous countries that the study says we are more competitive than. It says we're more competitive than Germany, China, and Japan, and we have huge trade deficits with all of them. So therefore we're not. So if you look at this study that they did, they all these studies do the same thing. They don't just say what's the price here and what's the price there, which is what they should do. They took measures. For example, they put equal weight on factors such as labor cost, which is about 50% or more of final assembled product cost, because the labor that's in the assembly and in each of the component levels that comes into it. So labor is about 50% or more. And they put the exact same weight on utility cost, which is about 2% of manufacturing cost, and on corporate taxes, which might be 5%, and equal weight on ease of doing business, however they measured that. So the 800-pound gorilla in this, which is labor cost, they made one of, I think, 8 factors, and put at equal weight other factors that have almost no have minimal significance. And I've seen over the last decade, I've seen BCG and Deloitte do very similar studies, similar sort of academic, politically correct kind of stuff, and they always say the U.S. is now the most competitive, or will be soon. And as soon as they make those studies, our trade deficit rises and rises and rises, despite their conclusions. And the same is true for this KPMG and NAM study. So I think they're afraid. They must be politically afraid to say our labor costs are too high, because then the only conclusion would be either cut the labor costs. No, I don't want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. Or get the dollar down, which would in effect lower our labor costs relative to the other countries. And that's, the economists don't want to do it, the politicians don't want to do it, but that's what you eventually have to do to become competitive. But the studies seem to intentionally ignore the obvious in what they do.
So the point that I'm picking up based on what you're saying is that based on the numbers and the comments you just made, we can't be competitive.
We can't be competitive. Right now, we have an unlevel playing field, and in the current condition, we have, like I said, a $1.1 trillion trade deficit. We're missing 6 million manufacturing jobs because of that. But we can change that if society and the government acted. If we all acted, first thing I always say is get the dollar down by 20 or 30%. All of a sudden, our wage relative to their wage, they're here, ours expressed in dollars, theirs is going to come up to here, say, and we'll be much more competitive. Like one way of measuring that, there is the Big Mac index. So somebody does this study, and he looks at the price of a Big Mac in 100 cities around the globe, and then compares the price expressed and converts it all to dollars, and then compares them. And consistently, the U.S. is way overpriced, and in most of our competitor countries, the Big Macs are 20, 30, 40% lower than here. And the same is true in manufactured goods, because it's labor finally that makes that happen. We're the reserve currency. Every like when you have Ukraine and Russia going on, people in countries are pouring their money into the U.S. dollars to protect their money, and that drives the value of the dollar up. So the skilled workforce is a huge cause. The dollar being overvalued is an important part of it. We think we should have a value-added tax that would get the imports hit with that tax, like in almost every other country in the world. We would keep the corporate income tax rate from rising, because companies make their decisions on where they put their factories based on their after-tax return. If you tax them too high, then this isn't the best place to put it. So there's a lot of things that can be done. The government has not shown either the wisdom or the willpower to do them.
Do you think that if we were able to address the problems of the fact that we are losing employees, they're retiring, they're dying, there's this, that, the other thing. Do you think that by bringing in perhaps immigrants from other countries, train them, and I'm specifically, because I'm really high on this, that with regards to the Ukraine, if we were, which is a highly manufacturing country, do you think that if we brought in manufacturing employees that could come to this country, we can train them to fill the jobs that we lost to China and other countries? Do you think that that would help our situation in any case?
It would help dramatically. If you go back, whatever, 40, 50 years ago, before, during, and after World War II, there was a flood of skilled immigrants that came into the U.S. I know lots of them that eventually owned companies, job shops, machine shops, et cetera, here in the U.S. Right. And we didn't have to train them. We brought them in trained, and compared to most countries, if you brought in a toolmaker, a welder, or precision machinist from those countries, they wouldn't need training. They'd be, I mean, you got to learn English, you've got to learn inch, whatever. But basically, they have the skills and the touch to make it work here. So Canada is good at this. In Canada, if you've got the skills and you're clean, you can get in there. And they bring a lot of people in. The U.S. tends to bring in relatives and the poor, the hungry, and you have to do some of that probably out of charity, but you also have to take care of the country, and that says we should have our door wide open for millions of people with the skills that we lack and that the average American doesn't seem to want to learn. And if the Americans don't want to learn it, then we should find people from outside that want to come here and benefit from our great country and provide us with the skills that are missing. So I think immigration is a very important part of the solution.
This past weekend, I went to a graduation event at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., which is my hometown. And my granddaughter graduated in 3 years, a 4-year course in 3 years. And there were 41,000 people on the Washington Mall and 5,000 students. And they are all involved in everything but manufacturing. Where are they all going to, and they're all going to be making money. They're going to be all doing all of these things. But meanwhile, who's going to be making stuff?
Yeah, if you look at the detailed statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, at any point in time, about 30%, I repeat, 30% of the people with university degrees are in jobs that do not require a university degree. They're working in Starbucks, they're doing Uber, they're doing something, retail, something or other that does not require even a liberal arts degree, much less an engineering degree or a tool maker. So the reality is that we train about twice as many or 50% too many people with liberal arts university degrees, the kind of people you're talking about.
Right.
And some of them get great jobs like you're implying. Some of them don't. The sociologists and anthropologists and historians and so on don't do as well as your best machinists do. And so and yet the country subsidizes them by providing college loans, which we have like $1.5 trillion worth of college debt out there that's gradually being written off, and you and I are paying for it. And instead we should be promoting and subsidizing apprentice programs. And eventually, when the family looks at that and says, let's see, I could spend $200,000 sending Sue to become a sociologist and then work in Starbucks, or we could have her get paid from day one to be an apprentice, and the company pays for her tuition when she gets her degrees, and she'll make more money all of her life and start making money 4 years sooner. Let's see which one we're going to do.
How are we going to do that?
Yeah, but that's just a question of the country getting smart, and families are starting to understand. I mean, I hear about families that say, "I'm not going to pay that kind of tuition, Sue. Go do the apprenticeship thing, or at least get to associate's degree in manufacturing technology, which isn't as good as an apprenticeship, but it's not bad. It's a start." So it's happening slowly, gradually at the family level, but the government could do so much more in terms of recognizing that there's only so many smart kids, and if they all go to study liberal arts and there's none left to do manufacturing, then manufacturing is going to go to hell. And therefore, if you want us to be a strong country, economically strong, militarily strong, the country has to take the actions that will guide those kids, help them see all the information that would tell them that manufacturing is a strong, viable career.
I heard a number recently, something like 500,000 graduates are doing movie reviews. Now, I don't think they make enough movies for us to be reviewing, not even to mention the fact that with COVID, there's still a lot of people that still don't go to movies. So the point that I'm mentioning is that we still need to have people out there who are going to be doing manufacturing, making stuff, and some of the new technologies, including robotics, autonomous vehicles, and so on and so forth. I think you're right. I think that the kids today need to have one, parents who understand more that they need to guide their kids into a real uh, event to make their lives either better or what have you, but not to be so much involved in the liberal arts and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think art, music, all those things, great hobby, great thing to do on the weekend. Spending some of the money that you made with a good manufacturing job. Yeah. Let me just mention one thing. Can you see my shirt okay?
I can.
Okay,
How do I
manufacturing.
get one?
You have to tell me about a new case of reshoring. I've told you that before. So same thing for all the listeners. You tell us about a case of reshoring we didn't know about, and you get a free shirt, which is made from U.S. cotton and fully assembled in the United States. So it's real made in USA. So tell us about your cases and believe that manufacturing is cool, and you'll find better jobs in many cases than you would otherwise.
Do you think that in the near term that we're going to see successes and new jobs and filling roles, and with regards to the jobs that are overseas that you've been very helpful in bringing back? But the point is that we're bringing jobs back, but they're not filling these jobs now.
Well, I think this last month the number of manufacturing jobs increased by 50,000, something
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
So we've had pretty good succession of 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. So 300, 400,000 a year kind of thing. And if you look at the manufacturing employment historically in the U.S., it does this, it's horrible thing. And with this downward trend, and now for the last 12 or 13 years, we've had a steady, not wild, but steady going up, like the longest period of increase in the last 30, 40, 50 years, and doing much better than one would have predicted, say, 15 years ago. So I'm, if I could produce a million extra good manufacturing workers here tomorrow, within a year or two, there'd easily be jobs for them. The work would come. Like if you're a state out there or a city, if you train the workforce that's needed for manufacturing, the factories will come to your locality. It's the right thing for you. It's the right thing for the country.
You're sounding optimistic, Harry.
I am. I mean, I'm getting calls all the time from companies, from states, recognizing that the thing that's really gotten their attention, the Ukraine-Russia problem, and now China, with the risk of China decoupling, of some kind of an incident over Taiwan, and then China either refusing to ship to the U.S. or being unable to because we've blockaded the thing. And when that happens, U.S. companies are going to collapse because they can't get those materials they've been buying. And so companies come to us and it's clear the boss has told them, you will find a way to get the work out of China and preferably back to the United States. And the sooner that happens for all those companies and for the country, the better.
Well, to your point, China, they make the chips for automotive, for computers, for all the new technologies that we've invented and are developing, but yet China is giving us or selling to us the products that we need to fulfill on the development of manufacturing of goods. How is that going to happen when China's off one? They're having a problem, financial problem. Their PMI this past month was at under 50. Was at 48 point something. How are they going to do this? How are they going to do it when they're locking people up because of COVID? How are they going to do it? And how are we going to survive? Because we need a lot of product from China and other countries.
Yeah, we've allowed ourselves to be dependent, horribly dependent on them, unacceptably dependent. I agree 100%.
Right.
And they're going to do what they do. You know, they're going to either keep shipping us stuff or they're not. They're going to deal with COVID or they're not. But for a given U.S. company, if the company decides to bring, or when it decides to bring the work back, it really has a choice. Should I bring it back today in a controlled fashion, build a factory, you know, hire and train people, job work out to shops like yours, you know, and get it done so I'm ready? Or should I wait until that crisis happens when nothing's coming over, and then decide how my company's going to survive? And so and if the companies that get started now and they invest and they train and they hire and they promote, they're going to be the winners. And the ones that don't do that eventually are going to get slammed when the whole thing collapses. And is it going to happen this year or 5 years from now or 20 years? You know, the U.S.-China tension isn't going to go away. It's going to stay there for decades. And at some point, there's going to be an issue that's going to stop product from coming in. And the sooner companies understand that and get ready for it, the better for all of us.
Well, Harry, I'm not sure if I'm happy or unhappy with all of your points. I think that we've got a lot to learn about what we're going to be doing in the near future and far future. I do appreciate all of your points and your comments. I'm hopeful that we can survive this, grow with this, and I appreciate your joining us with our show today.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. For everybody out there, anybody needs help, anybody wants to tell us about reshoring, contact me. Anybody needs help deciding to reshore, we're here to help you. That's our job. We want to bring back 5 million jobs.
Give us your URL.
www.reshorenow.org.
Harry, thank you very much, and we're going to see you next month.
That's right, Lou. I look forward to it.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. For more information on this or our other podcasts, visit jacketmediaco.com.